Aloha, everybody. Part of what I understand each panelist was to, number one, identify three goals from our individual perspectives or areas of expertise, and then to touch upon certain topics that are within our area of expertise. So I'm going to try and touch on those items that I needed to touch on were, number one, the important ag land study, ag worker housing, as well as the general plan. And in expressing, I guess, the three goals that I'd like to bring up, I'll try and touch on those. So number one, as a goal, I would say to somehow enhance our legislative tools to preserve all our ag land. That currently that represents approximately about 49% of the island. Half of the island, 50%, is in conservation, and again, approximately 49% is zoned ag or within the state land use ag district. So the important ag land study is a piece of legislation that I believe in 2004 legislative session was approved, which ultimately required the counties to identify and go to the Land Use Commission and adopt maps indicating of those lands that are currently designated within the state land use ag district, roughly half of every island. Of that, what is truly important? The state has always, in its land use regulation, placed a priority on ag land, has placed restrictions on how and what you can do on ag land, has done numerous studies to attempt to identify ag land, and has finally thrown that on the counties and given us 5 years to finally do it. So we have, I know I signed the contract about 2 weeks ago, but I believe the contract is finally executed, being processed by our purchasing division of finance, of the finance department. And I'm hopeful that we can give our contractor, who in this case is the University of Hawaii planning department, the notice to proceed. Their proposal is a 2-year study, which will give the county then recommendations on not only in terms of maps of this roughly 49% of Kauai's lands, what is truly important as defined in the legislation. And there are a number of criteria such as soil productivity, infrastructure, including transportation, irrigation, as well as large tracts of land. So again, I'm hopeful that we can issue that notice and get going as soon as possible, hopefully within the month. On this, I'd like to recognize and give kudos to Alexander and Baldwin, who is Kauai's first landowner to individually take their petition to the Land Use Commission, and I believe the Land Use Commission approved it the other week, to dedicate its share of important ag lands. The county is doing that, but it would be great. I think that part of the spirit is if all ag landowners did the same, we'd be there in a minute. So again, my first goal was to somehow help enhance the tools, some of the tools we already have, but implement more tools to preserve all the ag land we have now. Second goal, to somehow provide the tools that the farmers need to actually farm. One of which is this recent introduction by the County Council for ag worker housing. What this does, be mindful that the comprehensive zoning ordinance that is the county's zoning regulatory document has always had a provision for ag worker housing. It requires a use permit, but in essence, it allows a landowner to exceed its current residential density specifically for the purpose of worker housing. Again, exceed the current density allowed. So it's a way of, exempting going over the density that limits that we placed, but specifically for that purpose. So there's a lot of concerns on abuse, So that is current. We had, I believe we closed the public hearing at the last, I believe it was the last meeting, but it comes back for decision making at the Planning Commission level on the 28th of this month. And then those recommendations go to the County Council for, they need to hold a public hearing and ultimately deliberate and act on that ordinance. So again, my second goal to help government in whatever way, or more importantly, farmers, put in place the tools they need to make agricultural production successful and feasible. Number three, what I've put as a goal is require island-wide, and I think Jerry, Roy touched on this, require somehow island-wide participation in ag production. To me, that's the only way that we're going to be sustainable. Every one of us need to, in our everyday lives, contribute to that. In other words, we've heard that roughly 4% actually farm. And this is kind of a segue. Be honest in your answers, but first of all, can I have a show of hands of how many people in here live on ag land or own ag land? Okay, now how many people in here actively farm or are actively involved in ag production? Well, I guess my goal is to one day see fewer hands go up in terms of living on ag, but all hands go up in terms of actively every day participating in ag. Because that's, to me, that's the key. And that's it. Thank you.